A righteous man who is not a Christian, who's not baptized into Christianity, will still go to hell only because he doesn't believe in Jesus. If the claim is true, if people are converting, if they are abandoning their Hindu identity just for a bag of rice, they would stay back for the same bag of rice, right? So why didn't we as Hindus rise up to provide rice bag or maybe more than a rice bag? Every Christian, regardless of their career, is a lay evangelist. That burden is on them. And is there a need to push back? Yes, that is the goal with this book, because today they hold on to that one word called propagate. But does propagate also mean demonize?
Absolutely.
Propagate does not mean demonization. Propagate does not mean manipulation. Propagate does not mean allurement. But these are the exact mechanisms that evangelicals use to promote, propagate, evangelize. So there has to be a pushback and there has to be a rephrasing of definitions around these words.
So that was just so amazing, your exposition. And when I was reading the book also, just the courage that comes out from every page, I think that for me is the completely defining feature. And especially because, I think that's part of your personality in a way, because when you went into Christianity, you were giving it 100% also, and so it takes even more courage to have gone full speed on something, driven everything, and then say, okay, maybe that was a mistake, or maybe that's a problem. And then to have the courage to not only uh, have that doubt, but then to be able to go public with that doubt and express it. I think that this is really, really remarkable. So
Thank you so
it was a special round of applause. One of the things that I found was, I went to a Catholic school in India, and then I went to the US. And this whole, when somebody first told me I was going to hell, it was coming from a Hindu background. It was just like, it was so absurd that I started laughing, because I thought they were joking. Like, I mean, you could say this as a joke, but like, I had to really like struggle to understand that they were actually serious about this. So to me, like transition from being a Hindu to a Christian is actually one. You mentioned several reasons why it's problematic, but for me, it's a constriction of consciousness. You have to kind of make yourself, this exclusivist belief constricts consciousness. So how does that happen? I think that is one of the reasons they have so much trouble also in converting in India, is because how do you have something which is already expanded and you make it, shrink it, or make it smaller?
Yeah, yeah. So, like I said, I will just again keep going back to my personal experience.
Right.
My mother always she believed in adornment of women. She always loved her glass bangles. She loved her bindi, a big bindi. And I've never seen her without red nail polish, only red, no other color, just red nail polish and mehndi from the plant on her hand. And she believed in that kind of adornment. And even as a Christian, she did not let go of it at all. And she raised me and my sister also in the same with the same belief that women should be adorned. So, uh, but after I became Christian, it didn't take me a minute to just completely make myself look like a Pentecostal. I didn't hesitate doing it. If you ask me what is it about Christianity or the Christian message at church that makes somebody go from what I had been to what I became, I don't think I can say any one thing. I was a new Christian for the first time I was going, but I will say this though. In that, see, Christianity is all about community, right? Everybody is dressed in a certain fashion and you would want to belong. It's just like college. A college kid would want to belong in a certain group, clique. And so I wanted to look like one of them. I didn't want to stand out. So they do it very subtly, they do it very meticulously, they know what they are doing. You as a new entrant into that community wouldn't know what they are trying to do, but you automatically fall in line with what they want you to do. So that sense of, it's a subtle, this, especially this part, is a subtle brainwashing, I would say, is a conditioning of the brain. And not only did I change my identity, after years of my mother hanging on to her identity, I made her remove her bindi in one vulnerable moment.
Wow.
So, I mean, if you just allow me just 1 minute, I'll share that anecdote. I was living in Hyderabad at that time, and by this time I was a Kattar Christian, and my parents were living in Vishakhapatnam. They said they've retired. Basically, all the children have gone on their path, and my parents just wanted to spend their last few years among their relatives. So we siblings allowed them to go live there by themselves. My father suffered from COPD for 10 years before he passed away. That's another thing. Jesus did not heal. I don't know why. So he passed away with COPD, but he was hospitalized when they were living in Vishakhapatnam. And my mother called me when I was in Hyderabad, and she said, that is in ICU and they have given up. Then instead of offering her solace, you know what I said? I told her, I said, you are still hanging on to your bindi. Why don't you just remove it once and pray? Probably that's the barrier. Probably Jesus wants you to remove that last vestige of your Hindu-ness, because that still identifies you as a Hindu. Probably that's a barrier. Angry God, jealous God, right? So probably that is stopping him from giving the full blessings that you deserve. And she did that. No pastor could convince her to remove her all those years, and just that vulnerable moment. Now, I would say, what is the difference between the pastor that converted us during our vulnerable moment and me when I made my mother remove that, bindi in her vulnerable moment? Nothing, right? I was just as vulture as the other pastors were. That's what it makes you. No, it's cultural erasure, out and out.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the, for me also, I went through this journey in a different way where, as I said, I ended up, I was studied in Christian school, I read the Bible, I studied it. But, as this whole theology of exclusivism, when I understood it, actually Hindus don't even understand it.
Yeah.
This is the biggest thing. Like growing up in India, going to Christian school, all of that, we go to convent schools, whatever. But even after living 18 years in India, more than 18 years in India, 21 years in India, I never understood what they were actually saying. Right? It's only when I actually went to the US is when I actually understood the ideology, the theology of exclusivism. And then once I started studying it, then the violence that comes packaged with that theology of exclusivism. I think this is what you were also pointing to, like, why do we need, and that's when I started speaking publicly, because till that point I was like, हाँ वो भी करते हैं, हम भी करते हैं, हम कृष्णा को करते हैं, वो जीसस को, क्या बड़ी बात है, like this is the typical Hindu attitude कि क्या बड़ी बात है कि वो भी कर लें. तो I want to delve a little bit into that. I'll give you one example that once I started researching, like in Alaska, for instance, they were indigenous people. And after Christianity was introduced, there is no family in which there is not a history of trauma of rape by the priests of children. So every succeeding generation was basically subjected to that. And now it's a completely messed up society. The indigenous society is completely destroyed. So it's not just cultural erasure. It actually, that violence gets permeated into society and it never leaves. And never leaves. It hasn't left America. It hasn't left Europe. And you see even in the Northeast that violence, the alcoholism will follow, and then the separation.
Yes.
So I just wanted to re-emphasize your point that the cultural erasure has consequence, right? And that consequence happens where you're shattering all of the natural support structures, the natural ways in which society is held together, and then the church comes and replaces it, and it creates this shattering.
Yeah. So before getting there, I once again want to root this back. This whole idea of we don't have to be upright, morally upright. We don't have to be ethically upright. This idea also, I would think, comes from the Christian theology. There is a verse in the Bible which says, "Your good deeds are equal to filth." Your righteous deeds are nothing at all. It is to say that even if you are righteous, it doesn't mean anything in God's sight. A righteous man who is not a Christian, who is not baptized into Christianity, will still go to hell only because he doesn't believe in Christianity, in Jesus. Now, there is a very, very nice meme that stuck with me that I saw a few years ago. And memes were very, very new to the internet. It is something like this. The setup is heaven, and there is Jesus sitting on some raised a platform, and in his lap is sitting probably a 2-year-old girl, and in the background is a bearded man, ruffian, rough-looking bearded man. So Jesus telling, the text is, Jesus says, "Mary, do you see that man behind you or in front of you?" She says, "Yes." And Jesus says, "He is the man who raped you and killed your parents on earth." What does that tell you actually? An innocent girl like Mary, who has been raped and murdered, and her parents who were murdered, is in the same place, which is heaven, with Jesus, along with the man who perpetrated this crime. That says that actions mean nothing to God. That is pretty much, somebody did a brilliant job in summing up the Christian message. Now, this meme maker was not making up this story. I will tell you how it comes from the Bible. So, when Jesus was crucified, there are 2 more criminals crucified along with him. And this Roman soldiers who were watching these 3 people to die so they can get the bodies down from the cross, one of the Roman soldiers wants to see, Jesus goes quiet, he wants to see whether Jesus is still alive or he is dead. So he pierces a spear into his side, Jesus' side. And the blood or whatever, the pus or something which oozes out, this Roman soldier is blind in one eye. So it falls on that man's eye, the soldier's eye, and he gets healed. And the thief, who is the criminal who is watching this whole drama, he says, "Wow, so you are indeed the savior, and please, will you remember me in heaven?" This is the way the Bible language speaks. So then Jesus immediately says, you shall be in heaven, in paradise with me today." What that says is, you are forgiven of all your sins. Doesn't matter how many murders you committed, but because on your deathbed or in the last moments of your life, you believed in me, I will take you to heaven and I'll give you eternal salvation. So that's what Christianity is. It doesn't hold a person accountable for their deeds, and that's exactly where the Catholics get their the whole depravity of no morality, the debauchery, I would say. And Protestant church is not far behind. All these years before the internet and all that, Protestants used to say that, oh, all that abuse and sex scandals are from the Catholic Church. They are equally sexually scandalous. And so many things come out every single day, especially in the West. So
that's that whole, whether you're saved by works or by faith, right?
That is a contradiction.
Right, the whole theological discussion around that. In some senses, in the Protestants, that's even stronger, that you're saved by.
Correct.
You cannot be saved by works, which is अपने कर्म से तुमको कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता, जो मर्जी करो, as long as आपका baptism हो जाए या आपको हो जाए, then in fact the heaven seems to be populated by all this Italian mafia, probably, who 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 killed so many people, and हमारे जो साधु संत हैं वो सब hell में होंगे. So I think hell is a better place in general to be if I'm going to be with those people.
Yeah.
So isme, I mean, there are so many things to unpack. One of the things you were also mentioning was this whole Christianization that is happening in India. In the 1990s, I actually read about this AD 2000 project, which was Pat Robertson's project. And they had this whole slide deck that time, like a PowerPoint slide deck they had made. And one of the things was that just like Coke is a bit ubiquitous, and just like, Microsoft saying computer at every desktop, we want to have a church in every village, and planted. And then one of the other things they said was they have to make they have to make native missionaries. Till that time, a lot of the mission was being driven by Western missionaries coming to India. And they had a very clear target that they're going to now change it to Indian missionaries. And we actually see that happen over the last 25 years. Almost all of the mission work has come to India. So as somebody who was seen it from the inside, one of the questions I had was that how many of those people who are missionaries are completely believing what they're doing, and how much of it is also part of the dhanda, that the converts they get additional funding and all of that, which means that if the funding stopped, how many of them would continue doing this if they were not getting all these funds from the outside?
Well, we don't have exact data because we don't have something like the Joshua Project to come up with this data. It probably should have. When we do a Joshua Project-like project from Hindus, I probably would go after pastors asking this exact same question. So how many people actually do what they do because they really believe in the Christian message, and for how many it is just political or economical or yeah. So I don't exactly have the data, but from my experience, a lot of these urban pastors, so let's divide them into rural and urban pastors. I have had pastors who in the rural area that do this work for the salary that they get paid by the church. And if you as a Hindu organization would go and double their salary, they would do the same thing for you.
That seems like a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but
Hindu fund, contribute to the Hindu fund. Make sure you scan that and do that, because this is what we need to do. One of the things Rahul has been repeating over and over again is we need to make Hinduism missionary again. This is one of the big projects that Rahul is doing, and we have to completely support that, I think. And one of the things that struck me with Esther asks us very pointedly, in fact, that book is as much a challenge to Hindus as it is to Christians, which is we derive these people as rice bag Christians, but why are we not able to give 2 rice bags? What is our problem, right? So you mentioned that, and I want to speak about that. Yeah.
So
yeah.
So I don't believe in this rice bag that label to Christians. My family didn't need a rice bag, but here we are. The claim is true. If people are converting, or if they are abandoning, let me put it this way, if they are abandoning their Hindu identity just for a bag of rice, so they would stay back for the same bag of rice, right? So why didn't we as Hindus rise up to provide rice bag or maybe more than a rice bag? So instead of asking this question, we have said that, oh, they're well funded, they're well-oiled machinery, they are very united. So what stops us from doing that? We don't have the wealth, and Hindus so poor. So why should we, how long are we going to hide behind this complaint that machinery is a well-oiled system? So when are we going to rise up and take responsibility and admit that we have failed our marginalized communities?
Our government controls all the Hindu earnings, Hindu temple earnings, millions of tons of gold is there, but they want to control that and they would let Hindu community spread their message. That is the biggest reason. And I would say it was happening all along, but even after BJP came into power, which believed in Hindus, why haven't they abolished that no Hindu temple treasures will be under control of the government ever?
It's very good, and I want to open it up for questions very quickly. But Esther, I want you to actually do a book reading for us. I think we've gone away from the real literary book reading, because one of the things I really enjoyed about Esther's book was how beautifully it is written, how beautiful the language is, and how expressive it is. So if you have a favorite part, you can read that. I can tell you one of my favorite parts if you want to read, which is why the book is more than just having a podcast. You have something in the introduction which I think is beautiful. But yeah, pick please. I'd like to read.
So, why this book? Why now? My story first found national stage in January 2020, thanks to the extremely thought-provoking interview that Sri Rajiv Malhotra conducted on his YouTube channel. Ever since, my audience has been repeatedly telling me, you should write a book, tell your story. What most people don't know is that I had already tried. During my years in the Christian Studies program, I maintained a journal. Journaling was one of the spiritual disciplines I was taught as part of my seminary training, where I recorded personal reflections, theological observations, and lived experiences. After I graduated in 2015, I felt it was time to shape those entries into a book that could speak to others, navigating similar questions and challenges. I put together a proposal and began approaching Indian publishers. That's when I realized how much the publishing landscape had changed. Most traditional publishers no longer accepted unsolicited manuscripts. Instead, they worked through literary agents who served as gatekeepers, assessing whether a project was marketable enough before it even made it to an editor. But the landscape had shifted since then. The conversation around religious identity and conversion has grown sharper, more urgent. I'm not waiting on agents on approval anymore. Here's the broader non-personal reason why I decided to write this book and write now. By the 2010s, Christianity was losing ground in much of the Western world. Church attendance was dropping, traditional evangelism was falling flat, and institutions that once shaped public life were struggling to stay relevant. Faced with shrinking congregations and financial pressure, global Christian networks turned outward. The logic was simple. If the message wasn't working at home, it had to be exported. Africa and Asia became their primary focus. Among them, India stood out. A densely populated country carrying the baggage of colonization and still dealing with post-colonial identity fractures was seen as ideal terrain. The West viewed India's spiritual diversity not as richness but as confusion. It saw this perceived confusion as an opening. Add to that the lingering fascination with Western systems and minimal policy oversight on religious conversions, and India became a soft target. Over the course of my public journey, I've spoken extensively in Telugu, Hindi, and English on various platforms, something that I already shared, right? Stages, news channels, podcasts, panels, but each time I shared only parts of the whole, a moment here, an insight there. Perhaps useful but incomplete fragments, and never the full story. Each platform demanded brevity, each opportunity clipped a part of the whole. It became clear that telling the full story in a single talk, in a single post, or a single response was nearly impossible. Each time, I left behind a trail of questions in the minds of those who listened. Why did she really leave? Is she telling the truth? What happened to her family? Was it really intellectual? Was it emotional? Was she bitter or confused? For anyone trying to understand the full arc of what happened, it would require piecing together disconnected interviews, tracking timelines, and reading between the lines of fleeting commentaries. That is not just inefficient, but it is also unfair, both to my audience and to the story. A book offers what nothing else does: a structure. It creates a space where sequence matters, where cause and effect can be examined without interruption. But that retention power of a book, its permanence, is exactly why I hesitated for so long. And it just goes on. I tell these stories not because I want to. I'm talking about the conversion stories of my family. I tell them because I must. Because across India, this pattern repeats itself quietly, surgically, and relentlessly. If sharing the truth of what happened to my family can stop even one devout Hindu from being lured into conversion at his most vulnerable moment, then I consider it my duty to speak. I carry this burden not just to defend my family's honor, but to sound the alarm for countless Hindu families across India who are quietly targeted by a powerful system. I ask only one thing from you, dear reader. Treat these stories with sensitivity. They are being shared not for sensationalism, but for serious reflection. Treat it as you would a fragile heirloom passed down for safekeeping. Particularly the chapters where I recount heart wrenching conversations with my family members, preserved exactly as they happened. To both my Hindu and Christian readers, I request that you handle these sections with genuine respect and understanding and without passing judgment. Let's dig in. In recent years, the phrase "rise back convert" has become a cultural shorthand flung across social media with biting sarcasm or self righteous fury. It's meant to shame, to reduce a complex, often desperate decision into a caricature of greed or ignorance. The term targets those Hindus who embrace Christianity, presumably in exchange for some material gain. A bag of rice, after all, is not always just food, although sometimes it is quite literally a sack of rice. But more often than not, it's symbolic of survival, of hope, of the desire to be seen. It might come in the form of a school fee paid, a hospital bill settled, or a month's rations handed over with a prayer and an invitation to church. But before we mock the choice and dismiss it with mocking hashtags and internet memes, we must ask a harder question, one that rarely finds its way into angry tweets or televised debates. If at all, if all it takes to uproot a centuries old faith is a rice bag, and if it can really tip the scales, then why didn't a fellow Hindu bring it before the missionary did? Why did we not step in with genuine care before someone else arrived with coercion dressed up as compassion? This question, I believe, is not just rhetorical, it is revolutionary. It shines a hard light on the chasm between those who lament the loss of Hindus to other faiths and those who are actually willing to do the hard, humble work of helping them remain anchored. It's a mirror held up not to the converted, but to those who claim to care.
Hello, I think it'll be a good time to maybe open up to some questions. I just wanted to have this one thought I had when you were talking about India becoming a dumping ground as Christianity is losing steam in the West, is that I remember, maybe in the 70s, DDT was banned in the West. It was banned in the US for causing cancer. And after it was banned, all of that stock of DDT was actually dumped in the third world and in India because there was no restriction on causing cancer in India. So I think this has also happened. The people who have longest been subjected to Christianity have realized that they need, it's not really helping them, while that same message is being dumped here. So yeah, I'll open up to some questions. There's one behind Vikas. You can start.
Namaste. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on the book. I have seen your video with Raji Malhotra ji's way back in 2020, so I know some part of your story. I have two small questions about the book. You talk about vulnerabilities in a Hindu family, which make them susceptible to influences by evangelicals. You have mentioned illness of somebody in the family as one of them. I'm going to read the book. I've not read the book as yet. Could you help us identify a few more vulnerabilities that you have noticed, maybe in your own personal experience and also around you, that makes a liberal, freewheeling Hindu family non-religious, susceptible to these influences? Part one. Part two, if this is so true, why can't we address those pain points as a well-meaning Hindu society? So these are two questions. Feel free to answer in any format you may. Thank you so much.
Yeah. See, by now, I think the vulnerabilities are all out in the open, right? What makes human beings susceptible or Hindus susceptible to evangelical predatory evangelists? Financial, the need to belong to a community. See, financial and social disadvantages that our marginalized communities face, that is about the marginalized. But there is also a section of population that gets targeted, which is well placed in society and they don't have any of these needs. Like some of our actors and actresses also get converted. What do they lack? They don't lack acceptability, they don't lack community or even money. So they still get converted. So there is health, there is that health thing. Like I said, health trauma, emotional trauma. But more than all these things, the biggest difference I see is the community, the sense of community, the ecosystem, the need to belong to a community, the need where when need arises, when an emotional need arises, where do I go? We don't have an ecosystem. They do. They know where they have to go. Even before they go to the therapist, they go to the pastor. That kind of, that community is not there in us, I feel. So we already know about poverty, illiteracy, social disadvantage in the community, but a bigger need is for that community. We have to belong to that community. Well, satsangs are there, but satsangs are mostly bhajan. We do bhajan. We do some Gita Parayan, and then we disperse, right? But when you see the satsang of Christianity, it's so much more than that. For example, they're talking about their problems, and there is pastoral counseling continuously happening. And then the community comes and prays together for that particular problem. Like they have something called the small groups. You know, in every neighborhood, you have a small group. Your neighbor, if he is a Christian, every week there is a weekly prayer in that neighbor's house. And when the church comes to pray in that house, in that Christian's house, they're only focusing on the problem. And they're all crying and weeping to God, saying that this problem has to be solved. So they cry together, they eat together, they laugh together. So it's a very close community. To give money always to make the other person happy. You just have to put your hand on them and say, on that suffering person, and say, we are there with you. My whole community is with you. You know what? This Sunday or this Wednesday, we are having a fasting prayer only to resolve this, to ask God to solve this problem. Do we have that kind of community, sense of community here in us? So I really commend that Christian sense of community. And a desperate person, that is what a desperate person needs. And we lost that. We used to have it. There was one time when we used to have it, but for whatever reasons, it has been taken away from us. And that is what here we are trying to claim back. Yeah. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Which is and
Very quickly to add to what Esther Garu was saying. So I lost my husband in 2021 July in US. So at that time I was working in Washington DC in the the embassy. And most of the clerical jobs at the embassy are taken in by Telugu Christians. I'm a Telugu myself, obviously not a Christian. But they all gathered in my house. Everybody came. They also came to help me, and wonderful people. Then just before going, they said, we want to pray for him or his soul, I forget. It is just the 4th day or 5th day, abhi 10th day bhi nahi hua hai, 12th bhi nahi hua hai. It was during the COVID. My parents couldn't come. There was a travel ban. I had nobody. I had just my friends, network, whatever. And I'm with Arsha Vidya Gurukulam, for those who know, and Chinmaya Mission. So wo friends aaye the. So, but these people were there. I'm Telugu, so ethnicity also matters. So all these people had come. They said, we want to pray. I said, sure. I thought they'll pray like Nalin's friends. My husband's name was Nalin. So his friends in Hyderabad, they said, we're praying in the church. Ye wo, haan. So they said, we'll pray. I said, haan, please go ahead. Tab ka tab they stood. They asked me to stand with my, holding my hand, and they was, praying in Telugu. I was so angry from inside because I'm a Vaidika. My family is a Brahmana. We are from Agrahara, so that kind of a background. And I was very upset. I would never go to a Christian's house and say, can I do Vedic chanting here, even though I know it. But when I said yes, I just thought that, they're so well-meaning, so wonderful, they'd probably go to the church and do it. They just didn't have, they had the gall, they didn't have any kind of embarrassment. They just stood there in front of everybody holding hands, and they're calling me Niruguda Randi, and then, hold hands, and they started praying. That wasn't the end of it. So I figured, obviously had read enough of, actually had followed Esther Garu for a long time, so I had known enough of but I just couldn't say anything. I couldn't confront them. I was very weak. In the office, that's when it starts, because I was living in a rented place, so they figured out कि इसका तो घर भी नहीं है, she doesn't have children, husband नहीं है. So I figured that they're going to, come towards me. So when I sent out the, the 12th, 10th day we have, so I said, with the blessings of my guru and everybody. So I was trying to make it like I have a full backing piche. Jabki people helped me, but it's not the kind of backing that she's talking about. There was literally no backing. That was it. I लोगों ने help किया, बहुत help किया. But the kind of help these people were giving, obviously that wasn't there. You know what she's saying. But I had to make it seem, I had to enact कि मेरे पीछे बहुत लोग हैं, just stay away. At the embassy, they would come every day, कुछ भोजन लेके आएंगे, कुछ टिफिन लेके आएंगे. How are you doing? You're living in a rented place. Is it okay? Rent के बारे में पूछेंगे, भोजन लेके आएंगे. They'll want to go for walks with me. I cannot antagonize them because they're all working there for years, and I'm just, a contractor for, and now I don't know आगे क्या होगा, after Nalin. So it was very, very difficult, and I was thinking, and I thought about her a lot and her videos. It gave me a lot of strength. Of course, my Vedanta Swamiji, my gurus gave me strength, but also what she said, because I know the tactics now. So I would remember what she had said in her videos. I'm like, acha ye ho raha hai, the vultures are coming in. I better, steel myself. So I wouldn't have taken the steps I did, but for having heard her. So I knew that they should know that I have backing, even if I do not. They have to know कि मेरे पीछे बहुत बड़ा network है. Just because then I would be like, no, I'm staying in a rented place because हमारा हैदराबाद में बहुत कुछ है. I don't need to be, owning a place here. So धीरे धीरे they stopped when they realized that they felt that, oh, she has a lot of people, which I didn't have. So thank you for that, and thanks to my gurus.
It's a wonderful comment. In fact, Esther, maybe you want to comment about that a little bit, which is how do they, like, what is the motivation? Like, I know in Islam, there's a lot of motivation because you get extra brownie points for, your chances of getting Jannat are higher because you brought somebody else, and there's that fear, which is always at the boundary, because even if you're baptized, even if you're quote saved, there's always the fear that maybe you're not fully saved yet. Like you have to do this extra work to make sure that you really got the ticket. So, or what is it that motivates that kind of work where you're trying to make sure you bring other people?
See, there are several kinds of Christians, but regardless of what your upbringing is, how liberal or how cutter fanatical Christian you have been, there is this burden of evangelizing. There is this, they call it the white man's burden to save the world, to become the savior. So every Christian has that. There is an evangelist inside every Christian. Because Christians are very Bible believing, okay? You're either a very Bible believing Christian or you're not a Christian at all, even within Christians. So they truly believe that the great commission of Jesus Christ, which is go and make disciples of the world. It is, every Christian has been commissioned by Jesus to go and evangelize the world, which is to go and convert everybody. So that burden has been placed on every Christian, regardless of what upbringing a Christian had, what career a Christian is in. So that is why I say, like I say in the book, there are career evangelists and then there are lay evangelists. and I have separated both of them. The neighbor in Bhubaneswar was a lay evangelist. He had his job. His livelihood didn't depend on how many people he converted or whether he kept the church alive or not. Then in Hyderabad, when we moved to Hyderabad after my mother's surgery and all that, and in Hyderabad there was a whole church that was that took it upon themselves to convert us. This was a career evangelist. So there is a lay evangelist and then there is a career evangelist. Now every Christian, regardless of their career, is a lay evangelist. That burden is on them. Now why is it so? I can give a couple of reasons. One is, of course, that burden, Jesus said it, so we have to do it. The second thing is, there is this concept of second coming. There is this concept of second coming, and Jesus is going to come soon. In fact, I said I'll say something about this, right? So Jesus said that he will come in the very generation of people that he was speaking to in the Bible. He said, before your generation ends, I will come back. And that hasn't happened. They're waiting for the last 1700 years or so. He hasn't come back. Now, for every Christian, there is this, it's a theory still. There's no evidence. I don't know how to prove it otherwise. They say that the sooner people get converted, the sooner Jesus is going to come back. Now, as a Christian, I would want Jesus to come back soon, sooner than later, right? I want the judgment day. I want the kingdom of God to come on earth and all that. So, I will do everything in my effort to convert whichever non-Christian I see around me. That's another reason why they convert. The third thing is, we need numbers on our side, right? We need numbers. People that don't really believe in the Christian message, they at least believe in the power of the church. So, numbers strengthen the church. The more the merrier, right? So, they want more people on their side. More the merrier, merry. So, they want people on their side, and they will convert whoever they see. And in the church, constantly people are being told to bring new people. Are there any Hindus? The very reason why they have the small groups in colonies and neighborhoods is because of that, to attract new Hindus into that. So there are several reasons why a Christian evangelizes, goes out and evangelizes.
Right. So one of the other things we don't understand as Hindus often is all of the different sects within Christianity that are operating in India. Like I know in Andhra, the Seventh-day Adventists were very active. In terms of they were one of the big evangelisms happened with the Seventh-day Adventists. Then we see all these videos of the dramatic scenes, and those are the Pentecostals usually, and all of that. So people often lump it all together, and in fact, they don't even separate the Catholics from the Protestants.
Yeah,
if you can give us a little bit of a flavor of the ones that are the most active from an evangelical point of view.
Yeah, the biggest dangers about evangelism, not that it exists, that Hindus don't understand how it works. That's the biggest threat that we are faced with. So, Pentecostalism, I would say, is a evangelical denomination that is rampant in India, especially in Punjab, in Andhra. Pentecostalism is dangerous also because it's purely for erasing your identity. Anybody dressed in white saris with no jewelry, with no adornment, and very morbid. If you go into Andhra villages, every village looks like there has been a death in the family. Where there used to be rangoli or mango leaves to the doors, and the sign of swastika and turmeric and all that, none of that is there. They look like, really, I mean, I say it wears a widowed look. So that's how they are. I mean, nothing. There is no. I'm not sure how to bring them back. We don't have a strategy yet, or I don't know how long we have to wait before we get a strategy. There is no one answer to what do we do about this, but that's a different conversation. Pentecostalism also is what it teaches that if you follow Jesus, your problems will be solved. That's one evangelical. Well, any evangelical Christianity does that. Pentecostalism more so, because as Indians, we are all lovers of drama, right? We love Bollywood, we love cinema, we like a song and dance. And Pentecostalism came with a whole lot of drama. Then other sober denominations, Pentecostalism is all about this theatrics on stage, healing, miracles. The dramas that you see online, they're not true, right? They're all drama artists. It's not, we can't even say that's personal experience, because the people are not facing those experiences in real. Only a few on the stage, the paid artists, experience that. Honestly, I mean, when I was still a Christian, these dramas were not like this. Like I said, the church itself is going through a cleaning. So they've just become that much more aggressive. Of course, there was no internet, there was no social media also back then. So nothing to promote and make viral. But the church that I went to, a particular church, which I have mentioned in the book also, this was a very rustic Pentecostal church where we sat on the floor and all that. After the service, Sunday service, every Sunday, there was this whole drama of delivering, they call it delivering of demons from people. And guess what their demons were named? Kali, Durga, Bhavani. So, Kali, I command you in the name of Jesus to leave the body right now. So, there was a drama. So, to come back to your question, the denomination that sells itself in India is a Pentecostal denomination, and other forms of milder versions are Hebron. Hebron is another. So I went into both. Some part of my life was into Pentecostalism and some into Hebron, and I continued in Pentecostalism. But like I said, stylish Pentecostalism.
In the West, Christianity is losing the ground. What are the reasons? And if those reasons are to be brought to India so that here also they will lose the ground, how can that be used?
Yeah, fantastic question. Actually, my third book, the second book, not the second book, but the third book is about 5 reasons why Christianity is collapsing in the West and how Bharat can learn and use those 5 reasons to counter conversions. So, the 5 reasons are there is a talk also on Neeraj Atri's channel on this. Absurd doctrines, absurdity of doctrines, illogical and absurd nature of the doctrines, their bloody history, immorality of clergy, their clergy immorality, greed of their priesthood, and the last one, evangelical greed, clergy immorality, bloody history, absurdity of their doctrines, and there is a 5th reason. So these 5 reasons I have named for the collapse of Christianity in the West. And when I say absurdity of doctrines, the young generation doesn't want to go to church because they think all the doctrines are absurd. I just called out one doctrine, right? The doctrine of original sin doesn't make sense. So the young people are asking questions. This is so absurd. This is so lack of common sense. So that's absurd doctrines. If you look at their history, it's all blood, right? It's so bloody. The colonization, the slavery, and all of that stuff. Now, young minds, they're much more compassionate than us. They are more human, and they may be any other, we can give them any other adjective, but they're definitely compassionate. They're more humanity. They love animals, they love nature, and all that. So those people don't like it when they see that their church is a result of annihilation of so many cultures. So much of indigenous traditions have been erased just to make themselves establish. Then they see that their clergy are very immoral. Every day there is a scandal coming out, both from the Catholic Church. Of course, we know the Catholic Church abuse, but also from the Protestant church. So much of immorality is there. And evangelists are very greedy. They want more money. And it's all out in the open. Like there was a Pentecostal pastor called Creflo Dollar who asked his congregation each to pay some $300 or $400 each so he could buy a 350 million jet so that he could quickly fly to Africa and all the unreached places and evangelize them. And people paid it. He got money. These are poor tax-paying Americans. And that greed is there. People are seeing now, even in Africa, it's become such a greedy enterprise. It's an economic enterprise, right? We saw in Punjab how these pastors just overnight they became millionaires and all that. So people are seeing that, and because of these 5 reasons, it's collapsing. Christianity is collapsing, and I would think when these reasons are informed, I mean, told to the people, the grassroots or organizations or individuals working on the grassroots against conversions, I think this will be a very good conversation to have, and this information should be made public.
All the 5 reasons.
All the 5 reasons work.
Out of that, which reason is the strongest reason, or at what age or economic cross section, which reason works where? How to select and apply to a cross section?
Shallow spirituality. Yeah, the 5th reason is shallow spirituality. I think this is the reason. This is the reason that will actually take people away from Christianity, because the world is going slowly towards spirituality. Even young people, you see, and most of that spirituality is Eastern. I would say Indic. So they want they are getting into meditation. They might call different reasons. They're getting into yoga. They're calling manifestation. They practice manifestation. So I think the moment they know that there is no way Christianity can answer these bigger questions, spiritual questions, it steers them away from Christianity. And shallow spirituality is one of the reasons, but also to tap into their minds, their compassion and all that. Bloody history, the bloodiness of Christian history has to be presented to them and shown to them that this many young children, young people were killed, babies were killed just to establish your church. So I think these two together will work for them.
The other apology that was often made is that the Christians were violent, but it's Christianity, Jesus's message is very nice, but the Christians were violent, right? And relating it back to the fact that the doctrine itself is causing that violence, I think.
I have answered that. Yeah, I have answered that question. Like if in the name of Jesus, Christianity went out and did all these atrocities, like erased cultures and annihilated people, then why was Jesus quiet? He's a living God, right? He's right here in this world. That's what Christians claim. So he's been living among people, but he kept quiet when cultures were being destroyed. So that has to say something about his nature.
Ralji had a question.
The question to you is one, that have you studied the financial flow, or do you know of any studies which are supporting this financially? Because there is a very large element of that. That's number one. Number two is that in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was actually drafted under a lot of strong Christian influence, there is a right to profess and propagate the religion. But at the same time, Hinduism, which does not have that kind of right, do you think it is time at a strategic level for the Hindu society to push back against it, say that we want the right of resistance to people who say that who have got the right to convert us, right? And number three is, to what extent do you see the mainstream press here in India as complicit in hiding this phenomenon and presenting its true contours coming out and known to the people? Thank you.
So, I mean, the first one, I haven't heard about that thing in the US. Yeah, I haven't studied that. But second question, is there a need to push back? Yes, that is the goal with this book, because today they hold on to that one word called propagate. But does propagate also mean demonize?
Absolutely.
Propagate does not mean demonization. Propagate does not mean manipulation. Propagate does not mean allurement. But these are the exact mechanisms that evangelicals use to promote, propagate, evangelize. So there has to be a pushback and there has to be a rephrasing of definitions around these words. And that is the idea, that is the goal of this book. Lend that language, that's what I mean by lending the language to the policymakers, so they are able to bring laws without the other party feeling offended or infringement of their rights. Without them feeling those things, we can carefully rephrase the constitutional laws. When the nuns got arrested in Chhattisgarh, right, of human trafficking, Rahul Ishwar comes on onto the camera and says that he begins his defense saying that I'm a Hindu, I'm an unapologetic Hindu, but I also respect that the Christians have done so much work, so much service to our community, to India, in building hospitals and schools. And the holy apostle Thomas of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ came to Kerala, and I'm very proud that he came to my state first back in 52 CE. This is how he goes. I wanted to counter him. Every line that Rahul said can be countered with 2 or 3 page answers. Number one, he says that they built hospitals and schools, free hospitals and schools. I would ask, why didn't they do that to America? Why are there no free schools and hospitals in America? American kids go into lifelong debt with their higher education. A lot of kids drop out of school education just because they cannot afford college education. Why isn't college free in America? Hospitals. People become homeless because they cannot pay hospital debt, hospital bills. Homelessness in America, the reason for homelessness in America is hospital bills. So why isn't it free there? Why did Christianity have to come to India to give us, does it love India so much, more than their Christian country? Number two, he says the holy apostle Thomas came in 52 CE. I'm actually coming up with a whole small book, why Thomas could not have come to India in 52 CE. There was no biblical text, no New Testament until the 4th century. So what text did he bring to India to preach? There was Jesus, the nature of Jesus was still not clear. Nobody even knew about Jesus. So which deity was he preaching in 52 CE to Keralites? These media people, and there was Ratan Chardaji on that same show. She didn't allow him to speak. It was just Rahul Ishwar and another lady from the Christian side. That's all. Only they got to speak. Yeah. So for a responsible person like Rahul Ishwar, he should get his facts right? So this is the state of media in our country.
I think to call him responsible is an exaggeration.
इंटरनेट का क्या रोल है इस चीज में? जैसे अब इंटरनेट ने बहुत ही चीजें एक्सपोज की हैं पूरी दुनिया पर ही, लाइक इस्लाम की भी बहुत सी चीजें और हम भी थोड़ा समझने लगे। इस केस में इंटरनेट, सोशल मीडिया ने क्या रोल प्ले किया?
इस चीज में मतलब in Christianity, about Christianity. Yeah, not much. So there are so many Christians who have quit Christianity, and there are many who are in touch with me also. And when I ask them, why don't you just step onto the public platform? Why can't we do this? They're like, we can't be you. We don't want to be you. So we've quit it, and so I don't know what this is about. I think former Muslims have more to lose than former Christians. At least Christianity doesn't kill people, right? Unlike Islam. So, but still there is that taboo. I'm not sure why, but there are so many former Christians already. I've had this early on when I told my story on public platform. There was a 80-year-old lady who wrote to me and she said, okay, I see your point, but what can I do now? My great grandchildren also follow Christianity because I am a Christian. I taught them to be Christian. I see your point. I'm ready to quit Christianity. But what do I do now? I won't have a burial space. Okay. My family is all Christian because I led them into Christianity. What do I do now? How do you answer that? So I'm just about 2 or 3 years away from my death. And I can't tell my family that I am quitting Christianity today, right? And that is really a problem. You don't know how to answer to these people. So there are people who are quitting Christianity, but I wish there were more people like me that came out and spoke, and I'll be looking out for more former Christians.
Trapped. Trapped. No, not trapped.
They're trapped, yes.
There are the ex-Muslim organizations working in the country and some states. Similarly, I don't see ex-Christians as Christian.
So maybe not there in India, but there is a whole former Christian associations. I don't say associations, but freedom from religion movement is a big thing in the US.
That's been context of India only. India,
Yeah, we need more people in India do that.
and that's how it is coming up on the internet. Like because of them, mainly radicals. When you try adapt flags to Christianity, and when you start disillusionment and coming out, you face sort of trauma because you lose faith and so many things. What sort of theological, philosophical, or religious backup can Hinduism provide at that juncture so that this transition becomes bearable?
Correct. So I can talk from my own experience. So it's not like I go to sleep a Christian and I wake up the next morning Hindu. It's never like that. It's a whole big transition, right? And because of a lack of Hindu spiritual ecosystem, it was so difficult for me to navigate into my way into Christianity. I still don't know a lot of things about Hinduism. I don't know, for several years, I didn't know what you do when you go into a temple. I was not raised in that, right? And then when I quit Christianity, I didn't automatically become Hindu. It was very difficult for me to, again, trust anything. And so in the West, when you quit Christianity, your natural leaning is toward atheist. Because a lot of former Christians become atheists because they don't have anything else to fall back on. Luckily, I have Hinduism, but that was a long journey home, I would call. Then when atheism did make sense, I thought maybe there is some power, I just don't know who it is. So that's agnosticism. So from out of Christianity to atheism, then to agnosticism, and slowly, I mean, it took a very traumatic path, I would say, to understand dharma, karma, and then, this whole sanskara and all that. And it was all my self-study. And somewhere I went into the path of meditation and sadhana. Nobody told me. But again, it's internet or maybe my sanskara, my good fortune that I had some, past life sanskara, and that's how I navigated my way. But not everybody is as lucky, right? So there are no ecosystems. There has to be an ecosystem. And now I have also heard that people that have reverted to Hinduism, Ghar Wapasi, so they are also lost. They are also in the lodge. They don't know what to do, how to do. There is no holding them in a form of community and organization. So there is a huge gap there. It would be very nice if you all come together and form those ecosystems.
When I was in the US, the church hated yoga.
Still does.
And we may be feeling very negative in this room, but yoga itself has done so much for promoting atheist Christians, ex-Christians to come to Sanatan. In fact, if you go to Rishikesh, the reason they are there is not because anything else but yoga.
Correct.
Have you seen this very actively, and is there a reason why all of the people in this room should pursue yoga, and for personal health, of course, but also evangelize the cause of yoga, because I think yoga is the gateway to bring a lot of these ex-Christians into Sanatan. What is your view on that? Thank you.
See, first part of it is Christianity views yoga and meditation as demonic. I used to practice yoga for a long time, and then when I went into this church, after I managed this elite church, the pastor directly said that you shouldn't. That's inviting devil into your life. Probably that's why I went into the seminary. So he said you shouldn't be doing that. And contemplative meditation is a big no-no. It's like directly opening the channels of your mind where the devil can directly pour into those cracks. So you shouldn't be doing that. And to this day, it is like that. I recently saw an interview of a young girl who was who was born in a Hindu family, but after her father passed away, her mother and they found refuge in a convent, Catholic convent. And then she left Catholicism and became a Protestant, but she is a yoga teacher in Texas. And you should see the comments. It's very recent, just a month ago. You should see the comments below that. Until she took the word yoga, she teaches yoga, they were praising her. And from the time she said, they said, oh, we loved it till she said, until she uttered the word yoga. And then they were demonizing her. So that attitude is still there. And yes, it would be, we have a lot of responsibility here, right? We have not marketed ourselves well. We don't know how to market ourselves. We can't even ask for our rights. And we don't raise our voice. I would say, I would not hold back in saying that we as Hindus have evolved into the most selfish race on this earth. And that is what is also affecting us now. And we have to, yes, we have to market our yoga and meditation and all that. Especially dhyan, I would say. Whatever West calls today manifestation, our ancestors have been doing it for so long. How did we get the Shastras? Otherwise, whatever we got, our wisdom. So, yoga and meditation definitely is the way forward. At least we'll forget about marketing it to the West. Our vulnerable communities, like how they preach the Bible, we can form these small groups only for teaching them the techniques of meditation, how to make your health go away, how to make you feel better even when you are faced with a problem, So I think, again, there is a huge responsibility on people like us who know what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, Anamika, okay, question?
Yes, Ish.
I wanted to ask कि because of colonization हमारी अपने धर्म के लिए civilizational illiteracy और unawareness हो गई है, and that's why what is Christianity able to offer to us or market to us जो मेरा अपना धर्म मुझे spiritually नहीं दे पा रहा है. I'm not that much aware about my own self. मेरे को इतना स्वयं बोध नहीं है, मुझे शत्रु बोध हो गया है. Like you were saying कि when you moved away from Christianity, you didn't have anything to fall back upon because you didn't know much about your own religion. And the same is the case for most of us, I guess. We don't understand our dharam enough.
So somewhere I think the narrative has played a role. We have been made to feel ashamed of our own race, our own beliefs. We are regressive,
Backward.
very backward, very primitive. And Christianity presents itself as very sophisticated. Its message is very simple, right? You are a born sinner, and here is a person who died for your sins, and he'll give you salvation. Just believe in him, and you'll go to eternal heaven. Don't believe in him, go to hell. Our message is not so simple. So there is punarjanma, there is so much of karma, there is, different kinds of karma again, prarabdha, sanchita. So all these karmas are there. It's such a complex message. It's very complex message. We have failed to make it simple. It is simple for people who understand it. Yes. Yeah. It is complex to a lay person. Whereas if you go look at, people that are not much educated, so if you tell them about karn, so whatever you're going through, it's your prarabdha, it is, if you tell them that, they don't understand. And we have failed to simplify it for them. They did that. See, Christianity is also very complex. Okay, you can ask, well, Adam disobeyed, now how is the sin coming to me? ऐसा तो नहीं होता है कि कोई और क्राइम करे और किसी और को जेल जाना पड़े. क्राइम उसने किया तो जेल तो उसी को, पनिशमेंट तो उसी को मिलना चाहिए, मैं क्यों कर रहा हूँ? आज के दिन ऐसा नहीं चलेगा. So nobody is asking those questions. Again, there's a whole lot of indoctrination, brainwashing and all that is going on. So they have not only simplified the Christian salvation message, they have also created such good fear mongering around even questioning the illogic of that message. We have failed in both, in simplifying that message and also creating good arguments around why this makes more sense than that illogic.
The thing is that the proponents of that or the speakers of that are not visible easily. It's in the books. In one sentence, in one word, or in this language, it is available, but that is in the books, not propagated, not easily available.
Not easily accessible, not easily
Language. Another thing is language. It's in
barrier.
Sanskrit or not properly translated,
Correct.
etc.
Correct. And whatever translations we have are all distorted translations. But the Christians pick up and hurl back at us.
What does Hinduism is teaching us? तो जब डे 1 से पता ही नहीं है, रटाया गया है सबको 25 दिसंबर. Everybody is so happy on 25th of December. किसी को तुलसी दिवस पता ही नहीं है. जब पता नहीं है तो आप उसको सेलिब्रेट कैसे करेंगे? True. Tithi is based on the angular displacement of sun and moon, which is extremely natural. जो कि हमारा एक दिन बनाता है, एक दिवस बनाता है. लेकिन हमें बता दिया गया है कि रात को 12 बजे दिन बदल जाएगा. और उसकी वजह से हम नए साल को आप सब शराब पीते हैं और नशे में झूम के उसको सेलिब्रेशन कहते हैं. पीपल डोंट इवन नो कि हिंदुस्तान में या फिर भारत में नया साल होता किस दिन है. जब हमें पढ़ाया नहीं गया रूट लेवल पर वो चेंजेस किए गए हैं.
Everything was lost. So, yeah. So, lost in translation, lost to colonialism. We have
secularism.
And secularism. We have lost the pride. We are no more proud. Our children are not proud of their civilization. I know, we know the problem. Yeah, for a long time we're discussing about the problem. So, this awareness, this, you could not think of this gathering just 10 years ago. So, we are inching towards our solution. But it's very slow. A lot of us do that. In our childhood, my parents never celebrated it on the, Gregorian calendar birthday. Nahi tha hamara.
I have a
Even as Christians.
simpler call to action. Everybody get 10 copies of Esther's book and distribute it to all your friends.
Exactly, yeah.
No, it's very important. We bring authors, and only when the word goes out, somebody has spent 10 years writing something. Oftentimes we ourselves don't read it because there is so much detail there. We have to get informed. This is a very Hindu aware audience, but we take it very, very, cursorily. We don't even understand Christianity. A lot of times, अरे वो जीसस की पूजा ही कर रहे हैं, क्या फर्क पड़ता है, वो जीसस की पूजा कर लें. आपने स्टडी नहीं किया, आपने देखा नहीं है, वो भी भक्ति मार गए जी, ऐसी बोल देते हैं. So we have to, this is a very enlightened, aware audience, but we have to start from ourselves and say, no, I need to study this. I don't just take all these slogans that are going on. फिर हम कहते हैं हाँ सर्व धर्म, सब ये गुरु कहते हैं सब धर्म समान है. राजीव मल्होत्रा मुझे उस दिन कहानी सुना रहा था कि उनके घर में कोई वो हो रहा था, गुरु बड़े थे, उनका नाम नहीं लूंगा, और एक बंदा आया वहां पे, वो कह रहा है मैं हिंदुइज्म से बहुत प्रभावित हूँ, मैं कैसे हिंदू बनूं. कह रहे नहीं तुम ओम जीसस करो. ये हिंदू गुरु बोल रहा है उसको. हाँ, सब धर्म बड़ा पाप जो है ना, ये वो उसके कारण ये सब समस्या है. तो हमें बल्कि बाहर एक और भी बुक लिखी है, ऑल रिलीजन्स आर नॉट द सेम, वो है ना. हाँ, संजय दीक्षित की बुक है ना. और बिल्कुल वो तो आपको we have to start from here. We have to start from here. How do we spread the message? अपने गिफ्ट गिविंग में कर दो कि अब मैं अपने सेकुलर फ्रेंड्स को दूंगा. ये बहुत सुंदर बुक है, बहुत आराम से पढ़ी जाएगी. all religions are not the same, आराम से पढ़ी जाएगी बहुत.
They're also your Christian friends, I would say.
Yeah, Christian friends.
Invite Christians also to they've been wanting to have a dialogue debate with me for so long. So I'm offering them. I mean, they should come, they should read the book, and we can discuss the book, and they can call me out on the claims that I've made. If they say these are claims, they can call me out on the claims that I made here.